Welcome to our first off-season here in our Los Angeles Chargers franchise on Madden 24. Our first item of business here in the off-season will be to free up cap space. I don't know how we went from 5.5 million to 6.9. Nothing happened. But one thing I do know is that it's still not nearly enough to get this roster where it needs to be. So, last episode I previewed some of the players that could be heading out the door, and today I think I have found some trades that could be mutually beneficial for a couple of our higher end players that are just making too much this upcoming season. Starting here with Mike Williams. Now, he is currently on our books for $32 million. And that is far too much for his services. However, if we were to trade him, the team that would get him would only have to pay $20 million, which is still maybe a slight overpay for his services, but it's a much fairer value, I would say. Maybe just, a couple $1 million per year over what he would probably ask for if he were a free agent. So I have found a partner that I think would like to add a guy like Mike Williams. They have the cap space in here, the Arizona Cardinals. If you look at their wide receiver room right now, they have two on the entire roster, Rondell Moore and Michael Wilson. This is a team that I'm sure would like to figure out either whether they're going to continue their rebuild with Kyler Murray or get a franchise quarterback in the draft. Either way, you have to imagine they would like some help at the wide receiver spot. Also, if you take a look at this team's draft, they have pretty much 1 million picks. So I think they could do with giving away their middle of their 3 third-rounders. I think that's a fair value. If you just kind of look at the wide receiver trade market recently, I think Williams could probably go for a 3. Of course, has an injury history, but his injury rating inside of Madden isn't to the point where I think it's going to be a massive problem. Would Williams fetch a 3 in real life? I don't know, but as he is rated in Madden, I think this is more than fair. You're getting a guy on a 1-year contract, you're paying him 20 mil, and then if it works out, you can still re-sign him. He's probably good for another, 3-year contract. So I think with how many picks the Cardinals have in this draft, spending one of them to get somebody that can come in and play wide receiver next season is a good use. So we are trading Mike Williams to the Arizona Cardinals for a 3rd-round pick. That is not the only trade we will be executing here to start this episode. There is one more. I previewed that we'd have to get rid of at least one of our wide receivers and at least one of our edge rushers. Well, now it's time for the edge rush spot, as we will be trading Khalil Mack here. I switched him to left end so that he could better fit the scheme of the team we're trying to trade him to. And that will be the Detroit Lions, so I think could really use a guy opposite Aiden Hutchinson here. They have Pascal. This is a team that, of course, was a win away from going to the Super Bowl. So I think they would be a team that would be willing to get aggressive here in the offseason, get the short-term player. Mack is making over $35 million a year, but the team that would trade for him would only be taking about 23. Again, a slight overpay, but much easier for a team to swallow that kind of cap hit than the cap hit that we will have. So again, this is a team that also has multiple 3rd-round picks. We're going to try to get the higher of them. Certainly willing to take the lower if this doesn't work. They say they have interest in him, but I think he'll still hold some value. Left end is viewed as one of the Lions' biggest needs here. Will they give us a 3? Yes, they will. So today we have offered a couple of our better players in order to get to $47 million in cap space. At least for now, I think that is enough. There are a couple of guys that we might need to get rid of as the offseason goes along. But that just gives us enough wiggle room where we can sign a couple of starters, add some depth, sign our rookie class, etc., etc. And now taking a look at our draft capital, we had just the normal amount of picks before these trades. The Chargers did not have anybody else's pick, and they also had not sent any of their picks to anybody else. But now we gain a couple of mid-third round picks, and we get a ton of cap relief. Again, I do think those trades made sense for the Cardinals and the Lions as well. And here you have it. Now we're up to 9 picks in the draft, which I think we really needed. So with that out of the way, with some cap space available, let's hop into free agency. Here in week 1 of free agency, the first guy we're going to be offering a contract to is Leonard Williams. He wants to be here in defensive line as a position that is just so poor on this team right now. He's got strength at 90. He's got both his block shade and power moves in the 80s. Now remember, we have to, in this first week, offer at least the player-friendly value, which will be a 2-year, $27 million contract in the case of Leonard Williams here. Didn't really feel like offering anybody else the player-friendly contract right now. Steven Nelson's really the only starting caliber corner, and he's just somebody that I'd rather get maybe for not the player-friendly value. Marquise Brown is somebody that I thought about for quite some time. The player-friendly deal would be $12.1 million a year minimum. And I just think we have enough at wide receiver not to spend our limited cap space there. And probably the most tempting person that I didn't end up offering it to here was Robert Hunt. I mean, 82 overall, that's a 12-point upgrade over what we have. In the end, just kind of the lack of speed and acceleration, as well as one of my favorite players in the class being a guard, made me not offer him here in week 1. And so just Leonard Williams will be the only person we offer to, submitting our stage 1 of 3 week 1 offers. We've got Leonard Williams. Now ahead of our second evaluation period here in week 1, Steven Nelson started to get offers. So if we want to bring him in, we need to do so now. Obviously 87 speed is quite bad, but the next guy that I would sign at corner is a 73 overall. So if you want a starting caliber corner and we desperately need one, you gotta go for Steven Nelson. So we're gonna have to offer him $10 million to play corner for us next year. It's definitely a band-aid solution, but we need something at corner. So he's gonna be the only guy. All the other players that I'm eyeing so far have not been offered deals yet. So in the second evaluation period here in week 1, we nab Steven Nelson. Don't worry, I'm going to get that 21 off of him. Not going to do LT like that. And then the other corner that I like, Greedy Williams, started to get offers here in the third evaluation period. Was hoping to not have to give him a player-friendly deal, but just for 1 year, 3.5 is not terrible. Puts us over the Lions. And so week 1 of free agency over. Finally, we won't have to offer the player-friendly deals going forward. We got 3 defenders. Now in week 2, definitely going to be giving more offers out, starting here with Ian Thomas, who I think offers intriguing speed while not being a terrible run blocker. So we're going to offer him a 1-year deal. We'll call it $4 million. At ends, we really need somebody else. Can't just have one signing here. John Kaminsky's not great, but he's not asking for a ton, so I'm going to offer him. And then Austin Eckler. Why don't we bring Austin Eckler back? There are a few guys that are a little bit younger below him, but none are honestly that good. Eckler combines some speed with some ability to catch the ball. And, you know, in real life, Jim Harbaugh has at least expressed the desire to maybe bring him back. Who knows how real that is, but 1 year, 6, I'm down. And I guess I accidentally clipped it out, but we did also offer Ashton Davis a short-term deal here in this week. And that puts us down to just $4 million available in cap. This is pretty much going to be all that we can do here in free agency. The rest of the offseason is going to have to be focused on the draft. Ultimately, I think we plugged a lot of holes and at least giving ourselves options at every position heading into the draft. A lot of defense for sure for a rebuild that I said was going to be focused on building around Justin Herbert. But a lot of these are stopgap options. We didn't get a lot of long-term players in this period. We didn't have the option. With our free agency wrapped up, let's take a look at what happened around the league. The Texans nabbing Mike Evans to go play with Nico Collins and Tank Dell. You got to imagine CJ Stroud is happy with that. L'Jarius Sneed going to play corner opposite Sauce Gardner with DJ Reed as well. That's instantly the best cornerback room in the league, I think, pretty easily. And you always got to love with Sneed that the Chiefs got worse. I think that's a win for the AFC West. The Texans also got Patrick Queen, which is a big get for them. The Lions continue to add to their defensive line after trading for Khalil Mack. And there's a division rival getting Michael Pierce, somebody that I really wish had yellow interest. I would have certainly signed him. He's pretty much exactly what I was hoping to get in a nose tackle, but just wasn't available to us in free agency. Robert Hunt goes to the Lions. If I had to maybe assign some winners for free agency, I would say the Texans, the Lions, and the Jets, especially here getting Marquise Brown as well, are the big winners of free agency. They got, a lot better, I think, and those were teams who were either good last year or expected to be much improved next year in the case of the Jets. And then, of course, the AFC West being big winners with L'Jarius Sneed out of the division. I would also add as a little bonus victory. Here is an updated look at the team after free agency. I think we did a good job at least getting to a point where we have passable players at every position. Currently, I believe as it sits, we'd only have one player under 70 overall that would be asked to play minutes, and that would be Covington. Minutes, I'm talking basketball here. I've been in 2K mode for a while, but pretty much everybody we'd be giving significant snaps to would at least be 70 plus overall, which is a pretty low bar, but it's the bar that we needed to set for ourselves here in this first offseason with the cap situation what it was. I think we did about as well as we could have in this free agency of just filling in the gaps. Would have loved to maybe get one guy that you're excited about being a long-term starter. That just was not in the cards for us here in this free agency. Our long-term starters are going to come from the draft. So let's switch gears and start talking about that aspect now. So let's start to get prepared here for the draft. And I did more of a full draft preview last episode. So if you want more of my thought process on some of my favorite players, I would look at the last, 18 minutes of episode 1 for that. But today I'm just going to go over here the mock drafts and some of our final players that we're going to get the additional scouting percentage on before the draft. And of course, this would be the equivalent of mock draft 3 for most years, but because we started in Super Bowl week, it is mock draft 1 for us. And then I cannot look at the last 2 mock drafts because of our house rules. So this will not be an exact prediction of where these guys go, remember, but it will give us maybe a pretty good idea of what we can expect in the first round, maybe who will be available at 5 and who might slip to us at 37. So Raekwon Carter, one of the 3 players I previewed as somebody I would take at 5, is projected to go at number 1 overall in this mock draft. Who knows if the Bears will still take this guy, but I'm not counting on being able to select Raekwon Carter with that pick. Now, the guy that I wanted to take the most, but I wasn't sure would make it to 5, thought would maybe take a minor trade up, would be available at 5 in this mock draft. That is Jerry Dupree. He went at 9 in this mock draft. And if he's available at 5, it's going to be very hard for me to pass on him, particularly because we didn't sign a guy like Marquise Brown in free agency. 4.4 speed kind of guy, and just really good all around. I want to use one of my final focus scoutings on this guy just to see exactly where those last 2 medium routes. Of course, we're not guaranteed to get those, but hopefully we do. And if not, we'll at least get it narrowed down to a range between 2 letter grades rather than 3 here. We know he's at least average, most likely above average, perhaps even elite. And if he's there at 5, I have a hard time passing. Now, if he ends up going between picks 1 and 4, and Raekwon Carter do as well, I imagine we'll be trading down to select a guy like Daniel Lopez. Now, in this mock draft, he went at 11, but he has fallen down the board. I don't know where he's going in the recent mock drafts, but you see here he's fallen down 21 ranks. I don't imagine he's going to still be going at 11. He might. It's certainly a possibility, but now all of a sudden, he was viewed as somebody, initially where if my 2 favorite guys weren't available at 5, I'd trade down from 5 to get him. But depending on just how far he falls, this might be a player I can trade up from 37 to get. And if that's going to be an option for me, I would absolutely be considering that heavily. A lot of these guys, of course, aren't really in the cards for us, but we get towards the end. I'm looking for Carnegie, who does not go at all. So there's a good chance Carnegie, who was my favorite prospect at 37, will be there. And again, there's also a chance we trade up to get a guy like Daniel Lopez. It just honestly depends on how far he falls in the draft. I'm thinking maybe around pick 25-ish would be somewhere I would start to trade up. Maybe like 27, so we'd be trading up 10 spots, but I don't know. We'll have to see when the draft rolls along when I actually would think to trade for him, but that's something that we'll keep in mind. He's also a player I might use one of these final spots on just to get an idea of if that injury is F on him, because if it's F injury, I might be a little more hesitant to trade up for him, but there's certainly a chance that it is not. So, with that being said, Jerry Dupree going to be a focus player. We're going to go down to, I don't know exactly where he is here. He is at pick 38, so I would imagine he goes somewhere late first, but he could be available even at 37, which would be, I think, a big win for us. And then we could go Carnegie. I feel like I already know enough to feel confident about drafting him, though. Maybe one of the guys that we really like in the third round we could go with here, or we could get a better look. I kind of like the idea of getting a better look of how good Demarius Smart here is in zone coverage. So I'll be using my third focus player on Smart, because if he has B zone coverage, I might prefer him over Portis. If it's C, I might prefer Portis over him. I'm not exactly sure there, and I'd like to get a bit more clarity. So with that out of the way, and again, if you want a better, more deeper preview of the class, I'd encourage you to watch episode 1. Let's now hop in to the 2024 NFL Draft. It is now time to officially welcome you into the 2024 NFL Draft. First on the clock are the Chicago Bears. As far as we know, they should be taking Raekwon Carter here, one of my favorite players in the class. And that's exactly who they will take, the edge player out of Tennessee. I think that's a really good pick. Probably the best edge in this class. Didn't maybe think he was the best player in the class, though, but certainly up there. Ben Charles, safety out of UCLA. Really highly thought of player. But like I didn't know enough about him to know whether or not he was worth this high of a pick. We'll find out, of course, at the end of this video. And then Brandon Reiner, solid offensive lineman. Didn't think there was a stud tackle in this class, anyone worth taking at 5 at least. And then LaMarcus Reed, a bit of a surprise here. I liked Reed, had him on my board as a trade down option. He doesn't even end up making it to 5. Just going to entertain some trade downs here. If there's a mini trade down where we could recoup a little bit of value, I wouldn't hate it, but no, there isn't one. And so the choice here at 5 is pretty clear in my mind. Jerry Dupree, my favorite option at the number 5 pick, is still on the board. He's got great speed. He's got route running. You know, we did find out that he's got B short and A medium, so he's at least B in all of his route runnings. He has F stamina, which is unfortunate, but pretty much everything else in this player profile is going to be B or higher. Jerry Dupree, 6'3", 200 pounds. Profiles to be really the future of this wide receiver position on the Chargers team. We've got some guys already on the roster like Keenan Allen who are aging. Some guys coming up for contract soon, and Josh Palmer. And then, of course, the Chargers also spent their 2023 first rounder on a receiver, but with Quentin Johnston not off to a hot start in his career, I think it opened the door for the Chargers to go back to that wide receiver well. We want to make sure we've got plenty of weapons for Justin Herbert this year, and I think this pick goes a long way into assuring that will be the case. Jerry Dupree, newest receiver for the Chargers. He has hidden development, 93 speed, 92 acceleration, 91 agility. Out of Boise State. Not often do you see a Boise State player up in the top 5 of an NFL draft. Also has some run after the catch ability that we didn't talk about. I mean, A juke move, A to B stiff arm that we saw there. Got some spin. So I think an all-around great receiver. The guy that was taken next has the exact same face scan. That's funny. So with our division rivals now up in the first, we'll check in on them. The Broncos end up going with a quarterback. We've got a new signal caller here in our division in Paul Geezy. I'm gonna guess that guy says his name. Another division rival goes defensive back here in the first round. Now creeping up into the mid-20s, I've officially decided that if he makes it to 25, Daniel Lopez, I think we're going to try to trade up for him, and he does make it to 25. So we're going to call up the Packers here and see if they are interested in a little move down to 37. Now, I think including one of the 3s this year is certainly an option in this trade. I think maybe a future 2 would be something else. That's kind of the max I'm willing to pay. If it takes much more than that, I'd say no. But of course, I'm going to offer first a trade that I think they'll refuse. Make them say no to a worse trade, which they do here. It's actually not terribly far off for the third 2 years from now. I'm trying to go 2 years from now just because I'm not quite sure we'll be good next year, so I'm a little bit hesitant to trade next year's picks, at least in rounds 1 through 3. Between a second 2 years from now and a third this year, I ended up including the second 2 years from now. That pretty much gets it done. I said I wouldn't offer much more than that, but if the difference is like a 6th round pick, then yeah, I'll split that difference for sure. That ends up getting it done. And this trade up was for right guard Daniel Lopez, an absolute incredible athlete at the position, about as good as you're ever going to see. Struggles a little bit with stamina, ends up not having as much injury concerns as I was fearing he might. And this is just a slam dunk addition to your offensive line. He's going to be a positive asset in the run game with that athleticism and that strength. And he's going to be able to protect the passer as well, which is, of course, a massive priority in this franchise. Daniel Lopez just could not let his slide last any longer. For some reason, he fell down the board 20 spots on the consensus board. did not fall 20 spots on my board, though, I'll say that. And we're lucky that whatever offseason scenario caused him to fall happened, because this is a guy that was originally projected to go in kind of that 10 to 15 range, and he is incredible. 95 strength, 76 speed, 86 acceleration. That's insane. And of course, hidden dev. I think that guy's got to be superstar, right? The Chiefs go with a tackle to end off the first round, and now we don't have a pickup coming for quite a bit here. Marcus Carnegie would end up going at pick number 7 in the second, so that was the other alternative to trading up, and I think we would have been happy there. As we get to the end of the second round here, there were a couple of corners that were originally in my plans in this class, but we ended up trading up from 37 rather than down from it. But as we get to 25 here again, not saying that I'll trade up with the Packers for a second time, but both of these players are on the board, and this is kind of the range that they will start going here, both Smart and Portis. We found out that Smart has B zone coverage, which I think puts him officially ahead of Portis on my board, but they're still pretty close. I think, we can only have one more draft day trade here. And if I can hopefully avoid using it in this scenario and one of these guys can drop, Potts, another guy that I was really hoping to be able to take. But there are other defensive tackles that I think of similarly in this class. Hopefully we can get Smart to fall to us. And no, he goes here at pick 29 in the second round to the Detroit Lions. And I really don't want to miss out on both of these corners. So you got to start thinking about the trade up here with the Ravens. I really wanted Smart. It was a little bit of a long shot, but I thought we could do it. Tried next year's 5 to make this trade up. Only 7 spots. It shouldn't take long. Was hoping we could do that because we have 2 6 in next year's draft. Ended up having to include this year's 5, which means we're very light on day 3 picks now, just a 4th and a 7th. And furthermore, we also can't make any more draft day trades until we get to the 5th round. So this trade was to ensure that we got at least one of the corners we liked in this class. And the man left on the board was Antoine Portis, 21 years old, 5'11", 200 pounds. Can play man, can play press, can play zone. Certainly has no weaknesses, at least no glaring ones. Not quite the man coverage upside that we saw with Smart, which is why Smart ended up being slightly rated higher in my book, but certainly you could do much worse in terms of consolation prizes. I think, you get a year younger with Portis, you get a little bit better size, and I'm still very happy. Felt we needed to add to the corner room, and we do here. Unfortunately, we only get normal development with Portis, but 94 speed is really good, and I'm confident that man coverage will be B, just because of his archetype being man coverage, and he has that B zone. So I imagine his man is at least as good as his zone coverage. 96 change of direction is also really, really good. 89 jumping, kind of right where you want it as well. Transitioning now to the 3rd round without any options for trades. Our next pick is at number 7. We also pick number 11 in this round. And there are really 3 players that are on my mind here with that 7th pick here in the round. Deshaun Dent, Danny Briscoe, and JP Williams. 2 of these guys we have clips on, and the 3rd we don't. But just because we don't have clips of Briscoe doesn't mean I don't like him. I really, really do. I think he's an awesome defensive tackle prospect. There was just another player at his position I like slightly more in the 3rd round. But he's already off the board, so Briscoe is my favorite interior defensive line prospect. Talking about all 3 of these guys, JP Williams, 21 years old, good size, really good athleticism, all-around skill sets. He's, I think, about as good as you're going to get for a 3rd-round linebacker. Danny Briscoe combines good athleticism, also 21 years old, A finesse with B block shed. That's a really good combination, and one I would love to get in the third round to play that other 3-4 defensive end spots. And then Deshaun Dent, elite strength, great speed, A short route, A run block, A catching. Really good player. His downside is that he's 23 and perhaps a little injury prone. So with the 7th pick in the third round, the Chargers select JP Williams, linebacker out of LSU. And ultimately, I made this choice over the other two because the other guys have some other options, I feel like, later in the class, whereas it feels like JP Williams not only is the top linebacker on the consensus board, but he's kind of, in my eyes at least, far and away the best linebacker. There is one other guy that will go right around this pick as well, but, you know, there was no value down the board. Like with our 4th round pick, we weren't going to get a linebacker that I liked. And so we wanted linebacker, which I did. We needed to take it now, and we get hidden development with Williams. 88 speed, 88 acceleration. Jumping's pretty low, unfortunately, but I think we'll be fine with what we've got here. And projects to be an awesome middle linebacker for us for the foreseeable future. Only got a few picks here. As for the second time in this draft, the guy drafted right after one of our players has the exact same face. We'd love to see it. And with that, we are up now at round 3, pick 11. 2 of kind of the big 3 that I was hoping would last are still here. And with the 11th pick in the third round, we will select Deshaun Dent at tight ends. I just think tight end is a spot that really needed to be upgraded. We want to again surround Justin Herbert with all the weapons that we can. And I think Deshaun Dent will be a positive asset both in the passing game and in the run. Age and potential injury concerns are, I think, the only reason he's probably available at this point in the draft. I think he's got good size. He's got the athleticism you need and the skill sets. Unfortunately, we land with normal dev here, 23 and normal. That combination, really tough to build a star out of, but as I kind of talked about in last episode, you don't need a superstar tight end in order to get a productive one. I think as long as you have the athleticism, as long as you have the blocking, you can get a really productive tight end. Now, can Danny Briscoe make it to the 4th round? My 3rd favorite defensive tackle goes here to the Browns. One of the reasons I didn't take Briscoe is because he had a chance to make it to round 4, pick 5. He had a lot of defensive tackles still ahead of him on the board. And we're getting close. He's still available here. And, of course, can't trade up at all. Why is this Packers pick taking so long? Jeez. And no, the Lions do it again. The second time in this draft, the Lions have taken the guy I wanted the very most. Come on, man. Gotta be kidding me. So close. What is that? 8 picks away. And, you know, we used both of our trades earlier on in the class, not allowing us to trade up. I absolutely would have traded up in those late 20s with him still on the board to ensure we got this player. I think he's kind of by far my favorite player left in the class. So we simulate to the 5th pick in the 4th round. Taking a look at our options, there are 2 that really call my name, both on the interior trenches. One is Barry Patterson, who is a nose tackle. We definitely need a nose tackle for next year. Not a crazy athlete, doesn't have much in the way of a skill set, but he is incredibly strong. And then the other player is Aaron Aiken, who's 21 years old. Really, really good athlete. Now, we have a center for next year in Lindsley, but he's 33 years old. He's making a lot of money. We could save some, maybe get some rollover. Aaron Aiken is the 14th player on the available board, and Barry Patterson, as you'll see here, scrolling down looking for him, would not even be in the top 50 of this board. In fact, he'd be the 8th highest defensive tackle, meaning he could slip to the 5th. Unfortunately, though, we don't have a 5th round pick. Now, once we get to the 5th round, we can start trading again, of course, as our house rule only applies for rounds 1 through 4. So we could risk him falling to the 5th round, maybe get both of the players that we like, or we could just take the player right now. We're going to end up with Barry Patterson. I liked Aaron Aiken a lot. It's just that there was no way we could come out of this draft without addressing interior defensive line. And we get normal dev here, but we do get 99 strength, which you love to see, despite the normal dev. Now, fast forwarding all the way to our last pick here in the 7th round. There's still a few players left on the available board that are in my favorites list. Marco Goodrich, he's at least solid in both man and zone, but having already taken a corner, I don't know if we need to take another. Greg Chapman, have not taken a running back in this class, was not a fan of the top of this running back class. We'll take Greg Chapman here and get a normal development guy. Has 91 speed, potentially going to have some good ball carrier vision, which will be important in this franchise. And that will conclude our draft. Let's now take a look at just how good we did in our first year drafting for the Los Angeles Chargers. And boy, was the draft good indeed. All of the picks that we made in the first 4 rounds are at least 73 overall or higher. And the guys we drafted in the first are quite good. Jerry Dupree at 78 overall ends up being tied for the 4th highest overall in the class. And he's got 79 short route, 81 medium, 74 deep with 79 release. So he's got a good starting point in his route running, good starting point in his release. Juke move at 86 is nice. Catching at 87. Getting a receiver who has over 90 speed and well over 90 speed was a big priority of mine in the offseason, and we did it with Jerry Dupree. Daniel Lopez ends up being the highest overall player in the entire class at an 81 overall. No surprise when we were looking at his prospect card. I don't know what made him fall down the board. He ends up with 88 injury, maybe 80 stamina. Maybe he had higher stamina and some storyline came out from that. But really good lead block and impact block. Both of his finesse blockings are already in the 80s. He's an awesome player. Antoine Portis, despite normal dev, ends up starting out at 75 overall. Has 79 man coverage. So I was sad that we kind of quote-unquote settled for Portis over Smart, but with 79 man coverage, I mean, that's practically A. So we'll have to see, of course, what Smart ends up being, but off of first glance, even with normal development, I really like what I got here in Antoine Portis. JP Williams, somebody that we picked at middle linebacker. Those 3rd round selections were really tough for me. There were a few guys. I really liked the 3rd round in this class. Kind of hoped that we could keep 3 3rd round picks, but we had to trade one up so we can get one of the corners that we liked. I like JP Williams quite a bit. Deshaun Dent ends up being 74 overall with normal development, and he's got 67 run blocks, 72 short routes, 83 catching. That's a good starting point for a rookie tight end, I think. Unfortunately, injury and stamina aren't great. They're not terrible either. They're at least both kind of in that low to mid 80s range. At 83 piece. At least neither of them are in the 70s, but you'd obviously hope for more. And then Barry Patterson, going to be a 73 overall instant starter. If you can get an instant starter in round 4, you got to be happy with it. Needs some work in his block shed and power moves, but they're at least both high 60s. You know, they could both be one upgrade away in block shedding and in power rusher to get into the 70s, you know, so he's not super far away. And then Greg Chapman here, I'll take 68 overall in the 7th round. Ball carrier vision is at 80, which is a solid starting point. Carrying's low, don't love that. He's also got a low injury, but it's a 7th round pick. If he doesn't pan out, it's not the biggest deal for the squad. Let's now take a look at the rest of the draft class, starting with the number 1 overall pick, Raekwon Carter, 77 overall. Good athleticism. All of his moves in block shedding, power, and finesse are at least 74. Stamina's a little low, but you get that often with defensive linemen, so it's not the biggest deal. You can just rotate those guys. Star development for him. Number 2 pick ends up being 79 overall, which is the 3rd highest overall in this class, so Commanders did a good job there. We didn't know exactly what his zone coverage was. It was A to C for us. Obviously, that ends up being A, which would have put him on my board. I still don't think I would have taken safety at 5, and obviously, he didn't even last to 5 anyway. Minor 74, solid. LaMarcus Reed, somebody that I was a fan of, 77 overall with 82 finesse moves off the rip, but he is normal development. The Falcons got an 80 overall linebacker here in Quinton Wilds, who's really good. I think he wasn't on my radar because of his age at 23. Didn't want to take a top 5 pick that was 23 years old, but he should have been on my board for sure. This guy's good enough to justify 23 years old. Let's take a look here at Marquez Carnegie. 76 overall for him. Probably would have been the pick had we stuck at 37. I don't know if we would have stuck at 37 anyway. We might have traded down from there with our first trade of the draft rather than trading up with it. But would have been a great pick with superstar development, 76 overall. Great pick by Tennessee. Demarius Smart ended up getting sniped by the Lions. He's 78 overall. Applied for the 4th highest in the class. He's honestly really similar to Bortles in a lot of ways, but his coverage is just a tiny bit better, and he's a year older, but 3 overall higher. But you think, in 1 year, Portis can go up that 3 overall. And the second Lions snipe, maybe stung even a little bit more, was really hoping to get Danny Briscoe. He ends up with hidden development, 73 overall, 78 finesse move, 73 block shed, 77 speed with 85 acceleration. I would have absolutely loved to get this guy to play one of our 3-4 end spots. Just couldn't quite get it. He's star dev. Dang the Lions, man. I'm already getting myself an extra rival outside of our division. And now the last thing we'll do here in the episode is take a look at the drafts within our division, starting with the Broncos. Paul Geezy here with 91 throw power, really good underneath thrower, has enough athleticism certainly to make some plays happen. Oblivious sense of pressure, isn't great, aggressive decision maker, just kind of is up to personal taste whether or not you like it. I personally like aggressive decision making. Carl Harris, honestly a really good player here. I don't know why he wasn't on my radar. That's the kind of offensive lineman I absolutely would have taken. I mean, getting him in round 3 is a win. He's certainly athletic enough. 23 years old is probably why he wasn't on my board. But 23 offensive line is pretty brutal. No, he's superstar dev. Oh man, that would have been a sweet tackle to take, even with 23 years old. I mean, we took a 23-year-old player in round 3 anyway, but at a position I think 23-year-old isn't nearly as detrimental. That's unfortunate. Another offensive lineman here. Gonna play tackle in our division, CJ Hankins for the Chiefs. 72 overall, star development. Solid pick there, but that's the only pick above 70 overall for the Chiefs. And then lastly here we have the Raiders, whose first 4 picks were all above 70 overall, starting with Bruce Bass, who's only normal development, but starting at 76 overall is really solid. Good athlete as well for Las Vegas. Solid pick for sure. Then they get a pass protecting offensive lineman. So everybody in the division got a tackle except for us, when we probably need one just as bad as anybody else. Really struggling in the athleticism department, but you get star dev. Should be able to protect the passer. Deontay McCann here to be a backup for Josh Jacobs, wearing his number that he came into the league with. Not super fast, but he's got some stuff that you like, for sure. And then a pass protecting guard here in Tim Riddle, who, not to be confused with Tom Riddle, but should be solid for the Raiders. So that will conclude the 2024 offseason for the Los Angeles Chargers. Let me know what you thought. Did we make some mistakes? Did we make the right moves? Want your opinion either way. And we will be live streaming the preseason probably 2 days from when this episode releases. If it's different than that, then I'll let you know. But thanks for tuning in to the Los Angeles Chargers offseason episode. Season 1 will kick off soon, and I will see you then.